Welcome back everybody. In this week's video, we are going to begin part 2 of the cylinder stacking series, and we're going to cover how to do variation B and variation C. So if that's something that you want to see, stick around and find out how we do it. So in part 1 of this multi-part series, we covered how to stack flat on flat rims to create our first cylinder. Now in this part 2, we're going to cover variation B and C, so the bevel on bevel and the indent and insert for the next 2 variations on cylinder stacking. So let's go ahead and get started with the recap of throwing the 2 parts for variation A before we move on to variation B. First, you start off with your set amount of clay. In this case, this was 2.5 pounds. I throw it to my desired width, which is around 4.5 inches wide, and I pull it. And I keep the base a little thicker because I'm stacking something on it. And the middle section, or in this case, the rim of this piece, will be a little thicker as well, so around 3/8 of an inch thick. If this is your first time, 1/2 inch wouldn't be too bad as well, because you want that thickness to be able to blend it up into the next piece that we're about to throw. And the recap of throwing the next piece, I use a little less clay for that, around 2-ish pounds. And I throw this one a little differently. I keep the bottom a little thinner because that will actually be the top when I flip it. And I thin the walls as I go up. But where they join, so the top of this piece, I keep it a little thicker, so matching the thickness to match the bottom piece. And then I will be digging in the inside to remove some of that base piece. So when I flip it, it has an opening for my hand to get in. So let's go ahead and jump back to the normal speed. All right, so we went and made another set of cylinders. This will be the bevel attachment. So we're gonna have this at an angle when we stack it. And I'm getting ready to size it up. This, I already got the size, and I'm gonna get this a little narrower. So a little tip that I have for doing this. If you have your calipers and you know that it's too wide or too small, you could hold it with one hand, and then with your free hand, use that to kind of push it in until the clay matches the diameter. Now you have to be pretty steady with your hands, because if you don't, then this won't be the most accurate. But this way you can tell in real time whether or not it is the same. And then I can stop the wheel, place it, and see exactly if I'm close or not. So I'm getting pretty close, so I gotta go a little more, so push a little harder. And one interesting thing about clay is if you push it in and it looks narrower, as soon as you release your hand, it's going to snap back to a slightly wider diameter. So I'm going to push in a little more. And please disregard the students outside. It is after school and they are enjoying themselves. All right, so right there, that looks pretty good. And so now I'm ready to start the bevel. But before I do that, you can see from the overhead cam that I still have clay on the inside. And I threw it the same way where I threw a really thin base and I opened it up. But if you don't want to trim that away, another tip that I have to remove that is a kind of hybrid. So you can grab a tool, in this case my throwing knife, get a little water on it, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start pushing down the clay where I want to remove it. So right there, I'm pushing straight down. And then once I hit the bat, I'm going to shift that towards the center, and then that way I can remove all the clay without having to trim it. So right there I'm scraping, and then I just scrape across towards the center to remove it. Okay, granted, you have to have steady hands for this, but that's another way to remove without having to trim little bits at a time. And then you just get your sponge, and then you add a little bit of moisture to that little lip. And you can remove more of that if you want, but I'm going to keep that because I do want to be able to throw that to get it a little taller. All right, so now for the bevel. I have to remember that this is my top. And so looking at the diagram again for variation B, is the top is beveled inward. And so there's many ways to make the bevel. I prefer the wooden tool. If you don't have this tool, you can use your fingers, and basically it's like a compression. So you add a little bit of water, and then you just push this corner downwards so that you start having it at an inward angle. And my left fingers are just supporting the clay wall, and I'm just kind of pushing down to get that angle established. And a 45-degree angle is the sharpest I'd want it. It can be a little closer to being flat, but you just don't want it any sharper than that. You can also use the wooden tool, just like trimming, you just kind of push down and remove the clay instead. And this will help to set that edge as well. And it will create a little undercut because it is pushing the clay. So just be mindful, don't push too hard or you're going to take away more than what you need. And a little bit of water does help to ensure that you're more smoothing than trimming it off completely. Okay, so I got my angle. And now before I pop this off and get the next piece ready, the base piece, I'm going to create the little groove at the bottom so I can sneak the wire underneath. And then I'm going to go ahead and get that piece ready. All right, and now for this one, because the top I beveled in, this one I want to bevel out. And the reason why you want the base to bevel out is when you get the top and you flip it upside down, if it misaligns, you rather it slide out than in. And so this I do the same way. Add water, get it nice and wet, and then I can pre-shape the bevel with my pointer finger. And then if you feel like it's not going fast enough, you could introduce a tool that's a little more rigid, like the wooden rib. Okay. And just make sure as you're doing it, the clay is not getting too bumped out. Like this one, you can kind of see it's bumping out quite a bit. So I'm going to need to remove some of that. If you rather keep that clay meat there for the blending going up, that's fine. You can remove it as well. And so right there, that angle looks pretty good. Okay, so I'm going to leave it there for now, and we're going to go ahead and scratch and score, slip, and get it attached. And one thing that does help before you get a scratch and scored and attached, you could do a quick fitting by flipping it upside down, and then just looking at the diameters, make sure they more or less fit. And then you can go ahead and then get it scratch scored and attached. So I'm going to get this one off. I'm going to put the top back on so that I scratch score that one, and then I'll put this one back after. So a lot of switching back and forth between bats. Okay, so I got the scratch and score tool. Spread the wires out a little bit, and then scratch score. Putting my middle finger for my right hand there so that I don't flare the top out too much. Alright, let's go ahead and repeat that process for the other part. So same thing, scratch and score, go back and forth and do some zigzags, get it all roughed up, and then once it's all roughed up, you can go ahead and add a little bit of water or slip, whatever you prefer. And then we are ready to line it up, attach, and blend. All right, here we go. And one thing that helps, I don't recommend just turning this slowly. I go up and I flip. So it's something like this. So up and I flip. That way gravity is not really working against you when you turn it this way. Especially if you have thin pieces, that way really works. Okay, so here we go. All right, let's get it lined up. Okay, kind of wiggling it to get into place. Shifting to make sure it's centered, looking all the way around. It's a little low on that side, so I lift it. All right, and then I can go ahead and start blending. So that little extra meat I had at the bottom actually helped in this instance where I can blend that. And I see it kind of slipping, so I can kind of pull it back with the bat before I wire it off. So I can spin it slowly and do a little blend. And that kind of helps seal it. And then now this is basically like a balloon. Air is trapped inside, and so the odds of it collapsing on itself are a little less. All right, let's get this wire set up and cut just like we did the last one. And so now when I cut, like I said before, I take the wire, put it up, and I slide it into that groove I made. Then I pin down the wire with one hand, in this case it's my right hand, and then I'm going to slide across with my left like it's a windshield wiper, like that. And the reason I recommend that instead of just pulling is sometimes when you pull, you end up sliding the piece off. If you can pin it down, your hand that's pinning down the wire will allow you to move this hand without the bat moving. So sneak it into the groove, start pulling. and then pinch and slide. Pop it off. And then from the overhead cam, you can see it got a little wobbly. So I can add a little bit of water and kind of lift and straighten because it was a little on the thinner side and wetter side. Okay, and then I can go ahead and cut this extra lip I have over here. So I'm going to bevel it, cut at an inwards angle. Right before I see it kind of fall, I lift and I pull. And use the sponge to round that little excess, compress. And now I can blend the inside seam. So first round, I'm just gonna use my fingers. You could use the rib, but I can see that there's a lot of extra slip. So using the straight part of my finger, I'm pushing against the clay wall and the sponge against the outside. Okay, and then I can feel the clay starting to compress. So right now, it was a little wider. I'm gonna start lifting my pointer finger up. So from the overhead camera, hopefully you can see this, but I'm gonna lift this little edge upwards so that I can blend it up into the clay wall. Okay, and then the reason why I'm using this instead of the rib is I wanna be able to feel the seam as it blends away, and I can blend it into the clay body. Okay, and then compress, and it's kind of like doing a pull. So really compressing that seam now and pulling it up. And you can kind of hear, I don't know if you could hear that on the mic, but there's some air bubbles popping and cracking, and that's just me pushing the clay and really compressing it so it becomes one piece again. All right, there you go, that feels pretty good. Now we're gonna switch to the ribs. And you can see the outside's bowing out. So I'm gonna switch, use the smaller one on the inside, the straighter one on the outside, and then do a compression with this. So compressing and pushing out. So right here, I wanna bump that out so it touches the rib. So right there, now it's touching the rib all the way, and then I'm gonna work my way up. And it's really compressing the clay now. There you go. And then now that feels like more or less one piece. Now I can work on the top. Use the sponge and water to get the top a little wet and start pinching and lifting. And if it's super off, like how you can see, it's really thick and thin, I'm just gonna do a pull all the way up. Starting to do a little taco shell. If I can kind of pull that and then I do a compression, I can seal that excess. And then from here, add a little bit of water. I do a collar. I can really feel where it's thin and thick. Collar this top a little more and I can do another pull. Okay, so I can really feel it's pretty thin here and it's thick here. So I could keep pulling and then I can shape this to whatever I want. But let's go ahead and show you the method to attach sections that's the strongest. So let's get this off, let's get the other two cylinders prepped, and let's show you the final technique for today's video. So this is the base piece, and I threw the top section already and I took it off. And now I want to prep this to receive the top. So looking at the diagram on the screen, you can see that the base has a little indent. So to create the indent, you have to have some sort of tool to create a little notch in the center. And so having a needle tool to create the notch in the center works. I prefer something a little more rigid and flat. So a chopstick is perfect because you can go skinny and widen it out by moving it, or you can go horizontal and make it slightly wider. But before I make the notch, I want to make sure to make this slightly wider so there's enough clay for me to create an indent. So that goes back to the compressions, very important skill to learn. So compress, make it a little flatter, make it a little wider. And then my left fingers here, I'm just supporting the rim so it doesn't mushroom out too far too fast. Okay, so adding a little water as necessary. and then compressing to flatten. Okay, width-wise, it's really up to you how wide you want to make it. But I would recommend that the width, you're splitting it up in half so that the indent is basically the same thickness as two of the sides. So this is about a ½ inch thick. So we're going to take this tool. If I use this flat edge sideways, the two ends, inside and outside, is going to be about the same width as the middle if I add those together. So this looks good. I'm just going to hold it right in the center and start creating the indent. Okay, if you feel like that's too wide too fast, you can turn it sideways and use that instead to indent, and then shift it over and then indent. So either or, they both work. Now if you don't have a chopstick, the back end of a needle works too. And that creates a little rounded divot, which can be good if your rim is rounded. So either or, whichever works. And then to open it up, you just support the outside and then you move the needle towards the outside, or you support the inside and you move the needle towards the inside. Either or. And depth wise, I recommend going down at least 1/8 of an inch. If you can go down a little deeper, even better. That's just more meat for the walls to then blend upwards into the top section that you're adding. And then just make sure that the width that you have here is going to be the same width as the rim of your piece. So I'm going to go ahead and then kind of clean it up with this piece. Get it a little more established and clean. Okay, looks pretty good. I have a lot of meat here I can blend upwards, so we're going to leave that. And before I pop this off, I want to scratch and score. So let's go ahead and add the marks. And I want to make sure that when I'm doing this, I'm not messing up the angle that I established. So very light pressure, and support here, scratch that up a little bit, and support inside, scratch that up a little bit. Okay, I'm going to pop this off, and before I do that, I want to check the width with the calipers, and basically I'm checking the very middle of this, and then the middle of my top piece should line up. Okay, that looks good. Let's pop this off and get the top piece set up. And as you can tell from the overhead cam, I dug it all the way through and I opened it. So in next week's video, I'll show you guys how to do that when we do a little more advanced section stacking. All right, so the middle right here of the rim should match this, and it actually does pretty well. So I'm just going to thin this out a little bit because I know that that opening was a little wider. So I'm just going to pinch this just a tad bit and then compress a little bit. I'm going to round these rims just a tad bit too so it can fit a little better. If it's too flat, the corners may hit. And I'm just checking the sizing one more time, making sure the middle of the rim lines up with the calipers. So I got a little too narrow, so I'm going to open up just a little bit. Okay, a little more. Okay, that looks perfect. All right, then scratching and scoring. And I'm going to clean up the inside, get that water off, and then create the groove on the outside. Okay, got it down. Let's add a little bit of water in the trench. Spread it out with my finger, but I don't want to soften it too much. Okay, and let's go ahead and flip. Okay, put it right in the center. There we go. Nice little ledge for it to rest on. Perfect. Let's wire it off. Pop it off. And now, because I trimmed all the way through, I don't really need to cut anything, and I can just blend this up. So I spin the wheel, just like I'm collaring, I'm slowly lifting that edge up until it pushes the water out. and use my finger to kind of blend that seam. I'm going to repeat that on the inside. And it's just so you can see the inside. I'm going to thin this top out first. So I'm not too sure if you can see the inside. So bring that out a little bit. And so you can see that the inside has a little lip. So I'm with my left hand here. I don't know if you can see it, but with my left hand right here, I'm going to lift this up to blend that into the clay top. And then I'm going to bring this up at the same time. So hands once again, compress and lift up. So get under that edge and then slowly start blending that seam upwards to get into one piece. Okay, it's okay if some of the clay rips off. I'm going to do that one more time, and then I'm going to switch to the rib. Again, this is just like a pool, really compressing that seam, especially if I trapped excess water or slip. I want to be able to push it out at this stage. And the more blending you can do now, the less likely you'll see your seam. Okay, I'll switch to the ribs. Same way we did the first two. Round side inside, flat outside. Start over here. I'm pushing it. So right here, I want to push and bulge out so it touches the rib. Once it touches, I'm then going to work my way up and compress. Right, and there we go. It is nice and blended. We got a 5-pound cylinder. If I want, I could actually do a few more pulls, but basically that's how you stack sections, and you can basically keep stacking one on top of the other until you get your final height. And so I'm just going to play around with this a little bit, and then we'll do a wrap up. Okay, let's do a pull. Need a little more water on the inside. Push out, push in, and this time I'm going to pull and shape at the same time. So I'm going to kind of shape and try to get some volume in. And so the cool thing about shaping and pulling at the same time is you don't really lose that much height because you're expanding it and lifting it up. And the only difference is instead of pulling straight up, you're pushing out and you're pulling and shaping at the same time. So I can make another video that kind of goes over that. I'm going to repeat that now with the rib on the inside. Because right here, it didn't push out as much. So I got to watch out for this bump. This bump is kind of expanding out quite a bit. So I'm going to push that in a little bit with the sponge. I'm going to push out here a little higher and then do a pull going up. And this is where the seam was. So you can see that stretching really nicely without it separating. Yeah, this little bump out is still kind of scaring me. So I'm going to lift that up a little bit as I do the next shape. So my right hand, my outside hand is pushing in a little bit as I'm pulling up and shaping. And I can play with this a lot more if I wanted to. So I'll do one more shape, and this time with the metal rib. So this time I'm compressing with this tool and I'm pulling up and shaping. And a cool thing is, once you have your shape established, if it looks a little wonky on the outside, just use your metal rib and just like a trimming tool, leave it up against the clay to remove that wobble that you don't want. So I could keep shaping this, but you guys are not here to see that. You are here to see the cylinder stacking. And that's basically how I recommend stacking the cylinders, variation A, B, or C. And in next week's video, I'm going to show you how to pre-shape your stacks so that when you stack them, they're going to be more or less in the final shape that you want it, like how this looks right now. So if that's something that you want to see, don't forget to like and subscribe. That way you can see that video when it's released. And I got a little bored. I finished the vase. I stacked another piece on the very top so it is a little taller, but I'm not here to talk about this vase. I'm here to talk about the new membership program that I just released on YouTube. So now, if you want to become a member of this channel, there are 2 tiers you can sign up for. The first tier is the Mud Club, and it's $1.99 a month. You can cancel anytime. And with that membership, you are supporting this channel and helping me grow the channel, helping me make more videos for you guys, buy more tools, supplies, and even if I do review videos, it helps to buy those things because making the videos is not free. And if you really love the channel and you want to give more support, I have the second level, which is the Mud Club Plus, and you get a few more things unlocked. You get direct messaging with me on social media, and I can answer any questions that you have. Maybe not any questions, but I can answer some burning questions that you have. Send me a video, send me some pictures, and we can talk about what might be happening when you're throwing. And I'm also going to have curated video checklists that really fine-tune the videos that you should watch in order to really improve your throwing, because of course right now they're just in playlists. It's not really organized. And you get a shout out at the end of my videos. So at the end, I'll shout out all the people who are the Mud Club Plus, and every month you're subscribed, your name will always appear in all the videos moving forward. And so that way it's a keepsake. It's a memory that's forever in the MW ceramic videos. So hopefully you guys join to help grow this channel to something even bigger than what we have now. And stay tuned. I do have a Patreon that I plan to release. And with the Patreon, I will unlock some more interesting things like handouts, hopefully discounted prices on tools that I plan to release soon, ceramic ware that I'm going to release. And until then, if you can join and become part of the MW's Mud Club, I greatly appreciate any and all support. So anyway, thank you guys, and I'll see you later.